Welcome to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. We are the go-to resource for leaders looking to greatly improve their communication skills, whether it's one-on-one interactions, team settings, public speaking, or digital communication. By improving these skills, leaders can create stronger connections and drive positive change within their organizations. Each and every episode, we sit down with experts from various fields from around the world, just like you're grabbing a coffee with them, to dive into real practical conversations. Our goal is to help you transform your communication skills so you can lead more effectively, build stronger relationships, and make a lasting impact. So go grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's learn together. Well, how do you create client experiences so exceptional that they transform your business? They transform the way your clients respond to you, and honestly, it transforms your leadership. If you ever struggle to stand out, to deepen client trust, or to build loyalty that lasts, today's conversation is going to be right up your alley. I'm your host, Jason Raitz, Speak with People podcast. I'm joined today by the incredible Neen James. She's the author of Exceptional Experiences, 5 Luxury Levels to Elevate Every Aspect of Your Business. She spent decades consulting with luxury and legacy brands. She's here to share parts of her experience elevation model. And this is a great proven framework to help leaders like you create unforgettable experiences, increase revenue, and really stay top of mind to our clients. Get ready to learn a ton. I've been looking forward to this conversation forever. Thank you so much, Neen, for being on the Speak with People podcast.
What a privilege to serve your wonderful community. I know how engaged they are and all the value you add to them. So I'm delighted to be here.
And this is wonderful. We're just across town from each other. Typically,
I know, it's crazy.
interviewing someone, like I have to wake up at 6 a.m. to interview someone in Sydney. But today,
Well, you have an Aussie on your podcast, originally from Sydney, but yes, I love that we are so close.
that was wonderful. Wonderful. Well, hey, for our listeners that don't know more of your story, could you just give us maybe not the 30,000 foot view, but maybe the 20,000, who you are, what you do, what's got you to this place?
You know, Jason, I grew up in corporate business in Australia. So I worked in retail banking, telecommunications, and the oil industry. There were not a lot of chicks in oil when I was there, but as a client experience expert, what I'm obsessed with is this idea of how do you truly get people to pay attention? So I think when we pay attention, companies make more money, our relationships are deeper, and we take care of the planet on which we live. I'm so obsessed with this idea. I've written multiple books in this topic. And I've had the privilege of working with some of the coolest brands, Four Seasons, Virtuoso Travel, Shelter Air, even the FBI. And a lot of the meeting planners I work with, they call me the Energizer Bunny. And I think what's unique about me is that, yes, I'm Australian, so I have a global perspective, but I became an American citizen, so I also have a local perspective. I'm the oldest of 5. I sound like I'm 5. And what I hear often, Jason, from clients is that they need to increase their sales, or they want to understand how to re-engage with their clients, or maybe their team's just not doing what it is that they needed to do. And the old ways of doing things in our current environment just aren't working anymore. And I can fix that, because what I've learned through not only the keynoting that I do and the consulting, I'm also a confidant to CEOs of luxury and legacy brands. But I have the only research study of its kind in the world into luxury as a mindset. And so when you think about how you apply these principles that luxury brands have been doing for centuries, that allows us to truly do what I'm on this mission. I'm on this mission, Jason, to make sure that every person feels seen, heard, and valued. And my new book, Exceptional Experiences, that you mentioned, that's really the secret stealth message in the book.
Wow. What an incredible transformative mission. So often we think of our mission statements and I've had seasons where it was just to survive or,
Sure. I
get
think we've
1,000
all had
likes.
those seasons. I bet your listeners have too.
Yes. But we get to this place where you get into your sweet spot, and I mean, it just sounds so amazing. How did you get into with luxury brands? It's such a niche. Where did that start?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I've always been a corporate girl, as I mentioned, and I've always loved working in corporate brands, and I love a beautiful corporate lobby. So, because of the work I do, whether it's with, large marketing or media firms, whether it is with the financial services industry, I've always loved the services that they provide. What's really fascinating about luxury is that luxury is this very divisive term, I think, Jason. And some of your
Mm,
listeners are probably thinking, luxury, what does that have to do with me, right? Because I think people associate luxury with expensive or elitist. And what I would love to do is change the message around that. What I discovered in my luxury research study, which confirmed a belief I've always had my whole life, and that is that luxury is about experiences, not things.
mm.
And what I was able to do, Jason, was through my research study was to validate that. And I discovered all kinds of things which we can happily get into. But when it comes to working with luxury brands, when you think about the people who truly know how to pay attention, the brands that are exceptional at making their guest or student feel really special, it's often those luxury brands. And so when you start working with one luxury hotel, others hear about you, so they invite you to work with them. I'm so fortunate to have worked with Virtuoso Travel, which is really, I think, the premium luxury travel advisory service on the planet. And working with the CEO and their leadership team, speaking at their conferences around the globe, working with all their executive team, working with luxury travel advisors. What that allowed me to do was really understand intimately the way that they do things is so different. And what I noticed about Virtuoso as a brand example is, look, anyone can book travel online. You can do that yourself, Jason. That's very transactional. But working with a virtuoso travel advisor is transformational
Ooh.
because they're going to expose you to different opportunities, behind the scenes, exclusive things that are just available to them. And that is where I started to really see, wow, what Virtuoso is doing, what luxury brands are doing. It truly is transformational. And so obviously they are one of the case studies in my book as well.
Boy, that's so true. We can hop on Expedia or Priceline, but there
Sure.
is nothing like getting the inside track on something. When you're like, okay, I'm going to Key West and, you don't have a plan, but then somebody gives you that, hey, you've got to go check out.
Yes.
And that peace of mind that comes from it. I have a friend
Mhm.
who's a travel agent and she is specifically Disney. And what she's able to like unlock for people, it's like,
It's
oh,
amazing. And what's
yeah.
interesting? You use the word travel agent. And Jason, what I love about Matthew Upchurch, he's one of my clients, the CEO of Virtuoso Travel. And what Matthew did, he gave it a whole new language. He
Mm,
said they're not travel agents. They're travel advisors. Because just like we have a financial advisor in
yep.
our life team, you need a travel advisor in your life team to help you manage that precious asset of your time and creating these memories with people you love. And so I love that the philosophy and the things that I talk about, Matthew is role modeling from the top all the way through his organization. It's a global brand. And so when I think about what all of your listeners, maybe you're an insurance agent, maybe you're a financial advisor, maybe you're an entrepreneur, and you're listening to this and you're thinking, what does this have to do with me? Well, what I'm going to encourage you to think about is all of those transactional things are happening, but could you make it more transformational? I want to really challenge the people who are listening to this to maybe do something that I see often in my luxury hotels. Think about a bellhop, Jason. A bellhop is someone who's going to move your bags through the lobby super quick, get them to your room because efficiency is important. We love a good bellhop. But what I'd like our listeners to think about is I'd like you to think like a concierge,
Mm.
not a bellhop. Because a bellhop's very transactional. They're going to move those bags like you need. But a concierge is going to create moments. The concierge is the go to person in the hotel. They're the one who's in the know. They're the person who can get you those seats or that ticket for that exclusive event. And so, what I would like us all to think about, if we want to create these transformational experiences for the clients we serve, the team that we serve, our own community, and our work in our home, think like a concierge,
Wow.
not a bellhop.
Wow. Wow. Powerful. So, so many of us are trying to stay top of mind. You
Hmm.
talked about financial agents, advisors. uh, you know, even in my business, a speaker, we have different entrepreneurs listening, and we're all, it seems like we're all running the same play online. Make sure
Mhm.
you have compelling, posts on LinkedIn and social media, and we're posting the reels, and we're, all of the stuff to, kind of stay there. How with leaders struggling to stand out, to be that concierge, how do we get to that place, to where we can get their attention, and I guess I'm speaking more of the prospecting side of it, because
Sure.
once you've already worked with them, yes, okay, now I've got a different plan. But yeah, talk to us for a second just about that, being that differentiator kind of, leader to be able to stand out.
Jason, one of the things I think you would enjoy in the book, in Exceptional Experiences, we have this framework that I created because of all the consulting that I do with my clients called the Experience Elevation Model. And so, as you're listening to this, I want you to imagine a triangle. At the bottom of the triangle, write the word mind share because it's really about being able to stay top of mind, to capture mind share from people. And at the pinnacle of the triangle, I want you to write the word market share, which is about being able to drive market. So, be top of mind, be top of market. So, one of the luxury levers we talk about, the first actually is called entice. So, of the five luxury levers, the first one is called entice. This is where you're trying to capture the attention of your potential clients or maybe even re engage with your existing clients. And there are many systems of elevation to do this. Now, a system of elevation is what we use in the book. These are systems that are going to help you capture the attention of people that are important to you and be able to eventually have those same people become advocates for you. And that's really the top of the triangle. But a couple of systems of elevation that we outline in that chapter. The first one is one that speakers like you know the value of, and that is storytelling.
Mm.
And while I am not going to give you a big lesson on storytelling, there are about a gajillion people in the market who can do that right now. But one thing I think some people miss, whether it's the financial advisor or the entrepreneur, is too often we don't share our origin story. Now, think about luxury brands and how they do this. If you've ever had the privilege of working in or walking into a Chanel boutique, a makeup Chanel boutique, even the Chanel makeup counter at your local department store, what you'll notice is the salesperson is so excited to tell you the story behind the product. Every single piece of Chanel has a story related to Coco herself. And it could be the lipstick case is modeled on the staircase in her apartment when she used to watch the models walk down in their show. But what they do is they light up because they're sharing the origin story. What I want people to think about is if you want to capture the attention of people on your website, your LinkedIn profile, Instagram, collaterals, your voicemails, whatever it is, I want to encourage you to think about sharing your origin story. Because if you share your origin story, that's an easy way to capture attention.
Wow. Wow, that's so true. And it is, and it's rare, you think about it in the different companies, brands, all that kind of stuff that you look into. It's so rare when they do get that excited to be able to share. It's just so powerful to be able to do that. And I love that concept of the mind share, because it just frames it in such a different, a different way, which I think is just, again, so incredibly uh, powerful. Sometimes I think leaders, we just assume, or maybe we just have this idea that, providing exceptional experiences require big budgets. But
Mm.
I don't know if you'd agree with that.
I do not. I think some of the no cost attention grabbing strategies are some of the most powerful. Thinking about things like, are you using your client's name? One of the things that luxury brands do so well is personalization and customization, Jason. And so when you think about the opportunities to use someone's name, the correct spelling of their name, the correct pronunciation of their name, even before we went live today, you asked me how to pronounce my name. That level of attention doesn't cost anything. So, one of the things I would encourage our listeners to really apply is, what are some ways you could personalize opportunities right now? You see, I think when it comes to personalization, it requires information. We need to capture these data points of our
Mm,
clients and use whatever systems we have to capture that. But it also, customization is all about connection. If you can really customize the opportunities when you're in front of your client, talking to your client, serving your client, they will feel more connected to you and your brand. But the third one that is often missing is fascination. And fascination requires anticipation. So just like you're going to think like a concierge, you're going to anticipate needs your clients didn't even know they had. And that requires personalization, customization, and definitely fascination.
wow. Wow. I love that. My mind's already spinning because we have a new product coming out soon. And I was just trying to think of that, like, that just exactly that. Like, what could we, make it just that little extra level of special so it stands out because, there's my shelves have tons of books, we have tons of resources, but I remember the ones that are signed or have,
Of
something
course,
special.
because they have
Yes.
the personalization. Another thing that listeners could consider, and this might be something fun to experiment with your new product coming out, Jason, is engaging the five senses. What luxury brands do phenomenally well, if you think about, if you visit the Tampa Edition Hotel, or you go to the Madrid Edition Hotel, or you go to the New York Edition Hotel, they all have the same signature scent designed by a nose. It is specifically an edition scent. So when you think about what products we have, when if it's a physical product, how do you engage more of the sensory experience? But if it's an online product, how do you talk about the senses? Because
Wow.
something like our sense of smell has a deeper emotional connection. So if people think about something related to smell, think about it. You may have had a family member who cooked a particular meal, and the moment you smell that, you're absolutely transported back to a meal with that person. Or maybe your grandmother wore a signature fragrance, and every time you smell it, you are thinking of her. And so, what I want our listeners to think about is that there are ways to engage the five senses in a unique way that allows people to really remember you, to connect with you at a deeper level. You know who does this really well, Jason? IKEA. Because in IKEA, I don't know if you knew this, but 60% of the purchases in IKEA are unplanned. People go in there and they smell the meatballs and they touch the lovely rug, and then they see how easy it is to pull together this bookshelf. And then all of a sudden, $500 later, they're checking out after their bellies are full. They've got a cart full of projects to take home with them. IKEA are genius at the strategy. Even the way they get you to map all the way through the store is all thoughtful. It's very intentional. So you don't have to be a luxury product to provide a luxury level of service, but we can learn from luxury brands to apply to every kind of business that we have.
Wow. Wow. That's so true. I had the privilege of speaking for a bank event at an incredible hotel in Winter Park, Florida, which Winter Park is such a great name for Florida. It's just the cutest, most quintessential downtown, train going through it and willow trees, no snow, no winter, but all of that. But it's the hotel was the Alfond Inn, and yeah, everything that you're talking about as I went in, and I'm always looking for those tiny little parts that just make it shine. But oh, I mean, the difference between that type of environment where it felt like I was wanted, they were so
Mm.
excited I was there, to, you know, sometimes when I'm on the road staying at just a normal, I won't use another brand, but, is just interesting. And sometimes, yes, the Alphon Inn probably has a larger budget than a Spring Hill Suites, but
Mm.
if you lead the culture the right way and your team, sees the guests in a different light, powerful things can happen. So let's transition then as the leader. How do I help make that culture come through for the team? Because it's one thing for the leader to understand it, but then how do I lead in a way so, they're as excited. They see the transformation as much as I do.
I want to give you two strategies. The first strategy I would suggest is allocate time in your next team meeting to an ideation session and
Mm.
ask them what are some of the great ideas that they have. Because asking the team members who are really talking to the clients, students, patients, members, guests, they're going to have the best ideas, much better than you are as a leader because they're on that front line, they're in those conversations. That costs you nothing, and I invite you to allocate the time. So, ideation first. The second thing I would suggest as a leader that you can do is send your team out mystery shopping. I always tell my hoteliers, go sleep in your own hotel beds and see what the experience is. I tell my insurance clients, go and make a claim and see how it feels. For my travel advisors, I say, go travel on economy, travel on first class, and tell me what that is like. And so, what we need to do is mystery shop. Maybe you give some of your team members a small budget, invite them to go and take a coffee in the luxury hotel lobby and look around. What do they see? What do they smell? What do they hear? What do they sense? And then get them to share the lessons and learnings back at the next team meeting. Mystery shopping is an easy way for us to get an education on what people are doing. And so think about, as a leader, how do you, and maybe it's just the cost of a coffee or a cocktail in a beautiful location somewhere, but it doesn't have to require massive budgets to learn and observe. When you start to notice what brands are doing well, you can then start to think about and debrief as a team, how does that relate to us, our clients, the community we serve? Ask your team, tell me about your favorite hotel experience. Tell me about your favorite airline experience. Tell me about your favorite coffee experience. Whatever it is that your team is into, everyone has a story. Let them share why that story was so exceptional. Let them share what they learned because they become the hero of the conversation. Everyone learns vicariously about how we can elevate things just by their perspective. As the leader, you don't have all the answers. You don't need to have all the answers, but you better do a really good job of facilitating the answers that your team has.
Wow. Wow. And you just hit something that's so profound because so many of us, I have been there. We've asked such boring questions to our team
Mm,
and we don't draw the genius out of them. And even the most lackadaisical team member, you can get them motivated when you pull something out of them and then celebrate that with the team. They're like, "Oh,
yeah.
that's right. That's
And
my
as a
idea."
leader, if you want to get better at asking questions, Phil Jones is a dear friend of mine. He wrote a brilliant book called Exactly What to Say. It's a tiny book, it'll take you less than an hour to read, but with 23 really powerful questions in there that every leader can apply. If you're in sales, you need to add this to your reading list. And it's called Exactly What to Say. And I think it's one of the best books I've ever read when it comes to truly. See, here's the thing, Jason. I always want to know, how do we teach curiosity? Because I am so curious. I am a person who's always asking questions, who's always noticing, observing, trying to learn from everything and everyone around me. But what Phil Jones did in this book is he gave us this fantastic list that we can all use and apply. So I would encourage you, you may want to pop that in the show notes as a
Yes.
recommended reading. But for leaders, ask better questions and just stop talking. Like, imagine if you just put a great question out there, let your team answer it, and just shut up because the wisdom's in the team. Too many
Wow.
leaders just keep on talking.
Wow. I love that. That's so profound. We're with a business partner right now. We're in the midst of doing a 6 episode webcast for financial centers. So
Mm,
Hancock Whitney Regions, Suncoast Credit Union here in Tampa, GTE
perfect.
Financial uh,
I
are
love
tuning
credit
in,
unions.
and we've written this webcast to talk about how internally as a team we can generate internal referrals because especially in the financial
Mm,
world, so often we're thinking about, well, the neighbor tells the neighbor, but internally, if somebody walks up to a teller or a licensed banker, are they ready to share? You got to talk to Neen because she's the best financial advisor and she'll take care of you.
ab- you'll get a kick out of this because when I left high school, my very first job was in a bank, and so I had to make my way up to be a bank teller. I wasn't allowed to be a teller when I first started. I think my very first job in the bank was counting coin by hand, like manually, not even with the machine. That was my very first job. But when I was in banking, the bank that I work with, they had introduced a financial services component to what they do. And I had the largest lead generation in the state because every client that came in, I would ask them, have you been putting away money for your children's education? Do you have a retirement account? You don't? Then you need to meet our financial advisor. And so I was constantly connecting my clients because here's what I learned, Jason. It's easier to upsell an existing client than it is to get a new client. And once a client has a product with you, what I learned in banking was back then, a long, long time ago in Australia, that if a client had 5 products with us, it was much harder for them to go somewhere else. Now, I don't know what the stats are in America. I'm sorry, I can't speak intelligently to that. But I've always believed in the importance of financial advisory because it truly is someone who's on your life team. And so, what I think is really powerful about what you're saying and serving, and I love credit unions because, my dad, like my mom and dad, they've been with, he was a teacher, so he was with the Teachers Credit Union in Australia our whole life. So I have a special place in my heart for credit unions. But what I think is that we have such intimate knowledge of the people that we serve. These people, we are in their life, and we can give them even more opportunities. In the book, one of my clients, Bruce White, who's the CEO of JKJ Insurance, Johnson Kendall Johnson, he has this beautiful phrase, and he says, we need to surround their entire lifestyle. And that's what our credit unions need to do. That's what our bankers need to do. That's what our financial advisors need to do. We need to surround their entire lifestyle. If we want to provide an exceptional service, an exceptional experience, what is it that they're going outside for that we could probably be able to do for them? Think about brands that you use every day, the watch you wear, the phone you carry, the apps you use, the music you listen to, the television that you watch. They're all very connected because brands have been very clever in getting involved in your whole lifestyle. That's what our listeners can do too.
Wow. So powerful. Talk to the listener who is going, okay, wait a minute. I'm just not creative. I can't think of any, new ideas, which I don't necessarily believe that. I think they're telling themselves that. And so I think if you tell yourself something negative, there's probably a pretty good chance it's not going to work out. But talk to our listeners who are like, I'm having a tough time figuring out some creative ideas to make some of these experiences, different or shine.
I think that's rubbish. I do not believe that nobody, like, I do not, and I will never believe that you don't have some form of creativity. Now, maybe your concept of creativity is really different. So, for example, if you are a plumbing business and you want to apply the luxury principles here, it might be about thinking what's the things that you do before you even go to the client's site that make them feel really special. Is it in the way that you leave the voicemail, the text message you send? Maybe you have videos on your website about what's going to happen with the visit as the plumber. And when you come to their home, do you put the little booties on? Do you make sure that you take care and meet the cat that lives in the house or the puppy that is really the owner of the house? So, thinking about creativity doesn't have to be some big, massive marketing campaign or ad campaign. It doesn't need to be any of that. It's about thoughtfulness, systemized thoughtfulness. One of the brands that I thought was very clever that I feature in Exceptional Experiences, one of my favorite campaigns in the world is Billy Carcemon, which is a beautiful French. I love, love, love their rosé. Mathieu, who is the 7th generation CEO, when I was chatting to him about his beautiful product, and I was there in Champagne, we were talking about creativity and how do you collaborate with people so that you can look to have different clientele that you serve. Well, what Mathieu was telling me is they made a fantastic collaboration with a tweed, with a suit, a bespoke suit called Huntsman on Savile Row in London. And you know what they did? They developed a tweed that has the white of the foam and the white flowers of the grapes. It has green to represent the vines. It has silver because of the beautiful stainless steel that stores the champagne. So the two of them together created a brand new tweed, and they now market that, the two of them together, and they have expanded their client base because they're offering something to each other's client. And that is creativity. And it goes
Wow.
back to what you were saying about internal referrals. don't tell me you're not creative. That's not true. I think if you're listening to this, maybe you just need to get someone else, because those two brains will create a third brain, and maybe the two of you come up with something really creative. So, no, I will not take that nobody is creative. Mm-mm-mm.
Absolutely. It's like for me when someone says, "Well, I'm not good at remembering names, so I can't do it." Well, you've convinced yourself. Maybe not you
Oh,
don't
not
have.
making it important to say their name like 3 times when you first meet them. There's a
That's right.
brilliant book, it was written in the early 1900s, by the legendary Dale Carnegie, and he says, "A person's name is the sweetest sound."
That's
And one
right.
of the techniques that he talks about in the book is to say someone's name 3 times when you first meet them to really embed it in your brain, make it important. And so I think, his advice is as true
Yep.
today as it was back then. People love the sound of their name, so just get good at it.
Yep. Is there a brand that you've worked with that uh, was close to ruin? I mean, you don't have to give names or all that kind of stuff, but they maybe lost their way, and you kind of had to come in a maybe a more of a life saving role. And if that's the case, or if somebody's listening who their business has, they're sort of in that phase where it's like, okay, is this going to work? We've really lost some ground. What's some advice you would give them as they try to get out of that, ooh, bad season, but back to doing what they do best?
Yeah, I might answer your question in a slightly different way if that's okay with
Mhm.
you. I was brought on board to work with a hospital, and you don't necessarily associate hospitals or emergency rooms with luxury. But what I was invited to do was to really do a cultural transformation project with them. And what was incredible was I did so many interviews and focus groups with people from everyone from the front reception all the way through to the board members. And when I discovered what some of the biggest challenges were, and I was able to create a new message map for them so they had the same language to talk about, we created an ambassador program for them. And what was really powerful about that was that the people who were the best to help transform that hospital were the people themselves. And my ambassador program was made up from everyone from like the receptionist, janitorial staff,
Wow.
advisory board members, and we would get together regularly. And so it wasn't that they were in trouble. So that's why I just want to be really specific
Yeah.
about that. But what we were able to do was to elevate the experience for the team and elevate the patient experience and also the family's experience, because this hospital is integral in their community, and the COO and the CEO are so committed to the development of the team and the hospital and the experience there that we were able to elevate it through some very simple things, not with a big budget, not by any means. But when people start to feel empowered that this is their place of work, this is their client, this is the people that they love to be able to serve, if you give people the tools and the training and you empower them to make some of these changes, those transformations happen. And so while
Mm.
I was able to apply the luxury principles I teach in my book, they are the ones who did all the hard work. So if you're listening to this and you're like, "Oh, this is all too hard." Yeah, it's not easy to do this. Please, there's no magic pill. There's no way you can just outsource all of this, but you have to genuinely care about people, because I started by saying that my stealth message in this book and in all my body of work, Jason, is how do you make people feel seen, heard, and valued that costs us nothing?
Wow. Wow. Seen, heard, evaluated. That's it. That's so. The last question I'll ask you as we kind of wrap the question. Then, okay. So, for as a leader working hard and dreaming about creating these sort of luxury experiences, how important does communication play into all of that? And what are some of the communication practices that every leader has to make sure they're not just doing, but they're excelling in?
Communication is the amuse bouche. It is that little tiny taste that the chef sends out before your meal even starts.
Mm.
And I believe in this so much. There's a whole section in exceptional experiences about that. And right now you can go to one of my websites, luxuryIsAmindset.com, and you can download for free an excerpt from the book that talks about the digital and the analog communication methodologies that we all need to think differently about today. And so, when it comes to communication, I would encourage people to think about, we started talking about storytelling. What's the story that you tell others and that you tell yourself about the kind of work you do? As a leader, get that story right and really perfect the way that you share that story so that it is engaging to others. Think about your origin story, but understand that every single time you send an email, start a Zoom call, or you message someone in Slack, or you send a text message or a video message, these are beautiful touch points. I'm
Mhm.
always looking to elevate. As a speaker, I spend my time flying around the world. Some people drive, I fly. It's really the same. It's just a different form of commute. But as soon as I get to the hotel, I will pull out my cell phone, I will shoot a short video message, and I'll say to the meeting planner, "Oh my God, I'm on site. My room is beautiful. I wanted to let you know I'm here safe and sound." Send. Now, it takes me all of less than 90 seconds to reassure the meeting planner that I am there, because the meeting planner doesn't want to be worried about me. They have 50,000 different things to be thinking about. Is the meal hot? Is the room cool? Is my speaker arriving? Is the last thing I want them to worry about. And that easy video message allows them to just go, "Yep, she's here. I'm good. One less thing to worry about." Communication, proactive communication, by anticipating needs people didn't even know they had. I have had so many meeting planners share my video around with the committee. I've had so many of them comment on that. Think about these touch points that you have and how do you elevate them. Part of my role, you know this as a speaker yourself, is I'm always working with the AV team. And my tech checks are so fun. I know all the team's names. I will take them coffee. I always have gift certificates in my mic pack so that I can write them a handwritten note at the end of the show so I can give them all
Yep.
coffee certificates. Tim Hortons when I'm in Canada, Starbucks when I'm in America. But what I'm always looking to do is, because the AV crew, they are always the people who are blamed if something goes wrong, yet they are vital to my success on stage and the sound quality in the ballroom. And so I want to make sure, and in my keynotes, I'll often give them a shout out if someone's been super fun to work with. So it's really communication, every touch point you have as a leader. Think about all these people in your day. How about just pausing? How about just looking them in the eye? How about just saying thank you before you launch into whatever it is that you want or need? And so I think we need more of what I call systemized thoughtfulness, not random acts of kindness. Systemized thoughtfulness. I want deliberate actions where you are being thoughtful in your communication. I think as leaders, it is vital because leaders set the standard of everything, Jason. And there is a ripple effect that happens across the organization because of the way that you communicate.
Wow. Wow. Absolute masterclass. This is I've taken pages of notes. This is just brilliant. Before we fully move on, let me ask you a couple rapid fire questions. We're building this online library for our listeners to be able to go and just get new ideas, different things to be inspired by. As a speaker yourself, is there a speaker that every time you hear them, you just think, "Oh my goodness, how do they do it all?"
Oh
Who
my
is
God.
that person?
Easy, run tight. Run tight no matter what he writes, no matter what he says. He recently published a book called The Purpose of Purpose. If you love to listen to audiobooks, it's him recording it. He is genius. He's Canadian. He's funny as, and he's wicked smart. So he's the first person, but obviously that's really hard for me to pick a favorite. But
I know.
run always. I will sit in any audience he is in and I will write copious amounts of notes.
I love it. Fantastic. Not everyone is a podcast listener, but if you are, is there a podcast, either guilty pleasure, gardening or true crime or whatever, or development that you just keep going back to and just highly recommend?
I have a crush on Adam Grant. I have a crush on his brain. So anything that Adam does, any book that he writes, any podcast that he produces, his work life one, sponsored by TED, is a really great one. And part of the reason why I love Adam's thinking is not only does he have evidence to support everything that he talks about, he frequently cites sources of everyone else. So he is always ensuring that it's not just his opinion, he's sharing research studies. And that's not the way my brain is wired, but I love to know that there is evidence to support the things that he's talking about. So, highly recommend anything that Adam Grant says.
Wow. Wow. So with that, okay, he has done both podcasts and books. Is there a book then that for you, this is the end of the road, every leader has to read this book?
Easy recommendation. There is a brilliant, very, very smart chickie out there called Tamsin Webster, and she
Mm.
wrote the book, which I think you're going to love, Jason. Say What They Can't Unhear. Say What They Can't Unhear is what every single leader must add to their reading list. I'll tell you why. It is the best book I've ever read on communication with big ideas, communicating change, and what's fascinating about Tamsin. So, she has an academic background. She was also a Weight Watchers instructor. So, she understands how to take this methodology and really help shift the minds of the audience you serve. It is a phenomenal book. Highly recommend.
Goodness, absolutely. I will get that. Neen, I cannot wait for your book to come out, and we will do everything we can with our podcast listening audience to make sure they have all the links, and we'll make sure that we get it out there. You are so generous. You are so brilliant. Thank you so much for just so, openly sharing and helping us grow and transform. So we really appreciate it.
It's my privilege. Thank you for everything you do in the world, Jason.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Speak with People podcast. It means the world to us when you share this episode. Thanks for liking, subscribing, or following the podcast. That really does help the podcast get into more ears and into more leaders listening. Also, don't forget, we have 2 exciting resources for you. The first is go to Facebook and join the Speakers Group. This is a community designed for leaders who want to grow their communication skills. Also, go to speakwithpeople.com/skills library to access the Communication Skills Library. It is an online resource chock filled with resources that will inspire you and transform you and grow your communication skills. Thanks again for being a part of the listening community. We cannot wait for the next episode.